The old deed, hidden in county records, terrified the HOA president. It started before sunrise on my 42-acre ranch in Montana. I had just pulled through my own gate when an HOA president stormed over and called the sheriff, claiming I was illegally parked on HOA property. I thought it was ridiculous. What I didn't know was that one phone call would uncover hidden maps, forgotten deeds, a road nobody actually owned, and a secret buried in county records for decades. By the time it was over, the people who thought they controlled the land were staring at documents that changed everything. And trust me, the moment the deputies arrived at my gate at the end of this story was nothing like anyone expected. If you enjoy stories about standing your ground, protecting what's yours, and watching the truth come to light, take a second to subscribe. We've got plenty more HOA battles, ranch disputes, and land rights stories waiting just ahead. The first time Victoria Hale called the cops on me, I was sitting in my own driveway. It was still dark enough for my headlights to stretch across the gravel when I turned through the wooden gate of my ranch. Clearwater Lake sat silent beyond the fence line, and the only sound was the low rumble of my pickup rolling toward the house. I had owned those 42 acres for nearly 15 years. The gate was mine. The driveway was mine. The land under every tire track was mine. Apparently, none of that mattered to Victoria Hale. I had barely stepped out of the truck when I heard heels crunching across gravel. "Excuse me." I turned. Victoria was marching across the edge of the property from the direction of Silver Pines Estates. Her expensive coat looked out of place against the ranch fencing and cattle guards. She stopped 10 feet away and pointed toward my truck. "You can't park that there." I stared at her for a second. "I'm sorry?" "That vehicle is blocking HOA property." I actually laughed. The mistake wasn't funny. Her confidence was. "Ma'am," I said, "you're standing on my land." Her expression hardened. "No. This section belongs to the association." "It doesn't." "It does." I looked around. A few residents from the subdivision had stopped along the roadside. Some were holding coffee cups. Others were simply watching. Victoria noticed them too. The audience made her bolder. "You've ignored multiple concerns from our community. This is the first conversation we've ever had. Then let me make this clear. Move the truck." I shook my head. "No." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she pulled out her phone. "Fine. I'll let law enforcement handle it." She dialed immediately. Not a bluff, not a threat, an actual call. I folded my arms and watched. Part of me wanted to explain exactly where the property line sat. Another part knew it wouldn't matter. People like Victoria didn't want information. They wanted compliance. By the time she finished talking to dispatch, more residents had gathered near the road. Victoria stood taller, almost proud. "The deputy will be here shortly." "Good," I said. That answer seemed to surprise her. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's vehicle appeared at the entrance of the ranch. The crowd straightened. Victoria smiled. I could almost see the ending she expected. The deputy would arrive. He would side with her. And I would be publicly embarrassed on my own property. The patrol vehicle rolled to a stop. Deputy Ryan Cole stepped out. He glanced toward Victoria, then toward me. His face immediately relaxed. "Morning, Ethan." "Morning, Ryan." The smile vanished from Victoria's face. Deputy Cole walked over and extended his hand. We shook. Then he looked around the property. "What seems to be the issue?" Victoria stepped forward. "This man is parking illegally on HOA land." Deputy Cole blinked once, then looked back at me, then at the gate, then at the ranch house. Then at Victoria. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "this is Ethan Walker's property." "No, it isn't." "It is. The HOA records, the county records say otherwise." Silence. Several residents exchanged looks. Victoria's cheeks reddened. Deputy Cole remained professional. "Ethan owns the ranch, the lake frontage, and everything from the gate to the shoreline." The crowd grew noticeably quieter. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in Victoria's eyes. Not embarrassment, not yet. Just confusion, as if reality had failed to cooperate with her plans. She opened her mouth, closed it, then pointed toward me. "This isn't over." Deputy Cole sighed. I didn't respond. I simply watched her walk back toward the subdivision. The crowd slowly dispersed behind her. Most of them avoided eye contact. When they were gone, Ryan lowered his voice. "You okay?" "Yeah. You think she's going to let this go?" I looked toward Silver Pines Estates. The subdivision sat on the opposite side of the road overlooking the lake. Too new, too polished, too interested in land that wasn't theirs. "No," I said. "I don't think she is." Ryan nodded. Something in his expression told me he agreed. After he left, I stood beside my truck and looked across the water. The confrontation should have been over. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something. I didn't know exactly what Victoria Hale wanted, but I knew one thing. Nobody calls the cops on a man standing on his own land unless they believe they have a reason. And sooner or later, I intended to find out what that reason was. The answer started arriving 3 days later in a certified envelope. I found it wedged inside my mailbox when I returned from town. The letterhead belonged to Silver Pines Estates Homeowners Association. That caught my attention immediately. I wasn't a member. My ranch existed decades before the subdivision. I opened the envelope at my kitchen table. Inside was a formal notice. According to the HOA, my perimeter fencing violated community aesthetic standards. I read it twice, then a third time. The fence they were demanding I modify sat entirely on my property. The same fence my father had repaired. The same fence that had protected livestock for years. At the bottom was Victoria Hale's signature. I smiled despite myself. The sheriff call hadn't worked. Now she was trying paperwork. The second letter arrived 4 days later. This time it concerned my pickup truck. Apparently its appearance negatively affected property values. The third letter focused on lake access. According to Victoria, my boathouse restricted recreational views enjoyed by subdivision residents. That one was particularly impressive. The boathouse had been standing for nearly 20 years. Silver Pines wasn't even 5 years old. I placed every letter inside a binder. Date, time, photographs, copies. I documented everything. Years of engineering work had taught me one thing. Paper trails beat arguments. Every time. A week later, I spotted survey flags near the shoreline. Bright orange markers, freshly planted. They hadn't been there before. I walked down toward the water. 3 workers were measuring distances along the lake edge. One of them noticed me approaching. "You Ethan Walker?" "That's me." He handed me a clipboard. "Just documenting future trail development." I looked at the paperwork. The proposed route crossed nearly 200 yards of my ranch. Who approved this? Silver Pines. HOA. I didn't. The man looked uncomfortable. "We're just following instructions." I took photographs of every marker, every measurement stake, every worker vehicle. Then I walked away. I wasn't ready to stop them. Not yet. Sometimes people reveal more when they think they're winning. That evening, another surprise arrived. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. "Ethan Walker," a man answered. "You don't know me." His voice sounded nervous. Should I? No. A pause. Then he lowered his voice. I used to work for the Silver Pines developer. That got my attention. What about it? I saw what happened with the deputy. I remained silent. Victoria's been asking questions. What kind of questions? Old property surveys. I leaned back in my chair. The conversation suddenly felt more important. What surveys? Original subdivision maps. My eyes narrowed. The man continued. There was an argument years ago during planning. About what? The lakefront. I grabbed a pen. For the next 10 minutes, I filled an entire page of notes. According to him, early versions of the development plans showed different boundary lines than the final filings. Not dramatically different, but enough to matter. Enough to create legal headaches. Enough to affect shoreline ownership. You have proof? I asked. No. Then why call me? Another pause. Because Victoria's looking for something. What? I don't know. His answer sounded honest. But whatever it is, she believes the original maps help her. The call ended without a name, without evidence, without certainty, but it left me with something valuable. Direction. The following morning, I drove past the HOA office. Small building, stone facade, large windows, nothing remarkable. Except for Victoria's SUV parked outside. I watched from across the road. She carried a cardboard archive box from her vehicle into the building. Then another. Then another. Records. Old records. Exactly what the caller had mentioned. For the first time, the pieces started fitting together. The violation letters, the sheriff call, the survey crews, the obsession with my shoreline. This wasn't about my truck. It wasn't about my fence. It wasn't even about appearances. Victoria was hunting for something, and she believed it was hidden somewhere inside the original development records. That afternoon, I made a call of my own. Daniel Brooks answered on the second ring. The best property rights attorney in the county. Daniel, Ethan. You busy? Depends. I think my HOA problem just became a land problem. The attorney chuckled. Now you've got my attention. As I explained what had happened, the amusement disappeared from his voice. By the time I finished, he was taking notes. When I mentioned the missing surveys, he stopped me. Say that again. I repeated it. Silence. Then, Ethan, if someone is desperately searching for old survey maps, they're usually afraid of what newer surveys might reveal. I stared toward Clearwater Lake through the kitchen window. The shoreline curved beyond the fence line. Calm, quiet, unchanged. Yet suddenly it felt like the center of something much larger. Daniel spoke again. Don't remove anything. I won't. Don't confront anyone. Wasn't planning to. And document every step they take. I looked at the growing binder on my table. Already started. Good. His voice hardened. Because I think Victoria Hale knows something the rest of Silver Pines doesn't. I ended the call and looked across the lake. Near the shoreline, workers were already installing new trail markers. The project was moving forward. Confidently. Aggressively. As if the outcome had already been decided. But one question refused to leave my mind. If Victoria was so certain she owned that land, why was she working so hard to find an old map? That question stayed with me for the next week. So did the trail. Every morning brought new changes along the shoreline. Fresh stakes, paint markings, small orange flags. By Friday, actual construction crews had arrived. They weren't working near the subdivision. They were working on my side of the lake. I parked beside the fence and watched two laborers unload lumber from a flatbed trailer. Neither seemed interested in whether they had permission. Someone had hired them. That was enough. I walked down toward the shoreline. A man wearing a hard hat approached. "Can I help you?" "I own this property." He looked uncomfortable immediately. "Sir, we're building a community walking trail." "I know." He glanced toward the equipment. "We have approval." "From who?" "Silver Pines, HOA." There it was again. Not county approval. Not landowner approval. HOA approval. As if Victoria believed her authority extended beyond subdivision boundaries. I pulled out my phone, photographed the trailer, the workers, the equipment, the survey stakes, the partially cleared path. Every image went directly into my evidence file. The foreman watched me. Should we stop work? I considered the question. Most people expected confrontation. A shouting match, threats, immediate action. Instead, I shook my head. No. His eyebrows lifted. No. Keep going. The man looked confused. I understood why. If someone was trespassing on your land, stopping them seemed logical. But Daniel Brooks had already given me different advice. Let them reveal the full extent of the violation. The larger the mistake, the harder it becomes to deny later. By the following Monday, the trail had doubled in length. New HOA signs appeared along the route. Private community. Lake access Silver Pines, nature pathricident use only. I photographed those too. The irony was impressive. The signs were claiming ownership of property they didn't own, while excluding the actual owner. That afternoon, Victoria finally came to see me. I was repairing a section of fence near the road when her SUV pulled onto the shoulder. She stepped out carrying a clipboard, confident, smiling. Exactly the way people smile when they think they're winning. "Making progress," she said. "On what?" "The trail." I set down my tools. "You mean my trail?" Her smile tightened. "The HOA voted unanimously." "That's nice. It will increase property values." "For who?" "For everyone." I looked toward Clearwater Lake, then back at her. "Did anyone ask me?" She folded her arms. "The community shouldn't be restricted from enjoying natural resources." I almost laughed. Natural resources. The phrase sounded rehearsed. Corporate. Empty. The community didn't buy 42 acres of ranch land. Victoria's expression hardened. "You aren't being reasonable." "No. I'm being accurate." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she pointed toward the shoreline. "That lake belongs to more people than just you." Interesting. Not the trail. Not the signs. The lake. That was where her attention kept returning. The same thing the anonymous caller had mentioned. The same thing hidden inside those old surveys. The shoreline mattered. A lot. Victoria climbed back into her SUV and drove away, but she'd accidentally given me something useful, a direction. That evening I called Daniel. When I repeated the conversation, he became quiet. "She keeps talking about the lake." "Exactly. And not the trail." "No." Another pause. Then, "That means the trail may not be the goal." I leaned back in my chair. "What is?" "The shoreline." The answer hit me immediately. The trail was just a path. The lakefront was value, views, access, property prices, future development. Everything revolved around the water. The next morning brought another surprise. A county inspector arrived at my ranch. Noise complaint. Anonymous. 2 days later, another inspector arrived. this time regarding equipment storage. 3 days after that came a complaint about drainage runoff. All unfounded, all documented, all connected to Silver Pines. The pattern was becoming obvious. Victoria wasn't just building a trail, she was building a record. A paper trail designed to make me look like the problem. I documented every inspection, every report, every dismissal. My binder continued growing. So did the trail. Then came the moment that changed everything. Late one afternoon, I was photographing new construction near the shoreline when I noticed something strange. A worker accidentally dropped a rolled blueprint. Before he picked it up, the paper unfurled across the ground. I only saw it for a second, but it was enough, because the trail wasn't the only thing shown on the plans. There were docks, boat slips, viewing platforms, future expansion zones. The project Victoria had presented to residents was only the beginning. The trail wasn't the destination. It was the first phase, and suddenly I understood why she wanted the shoreline so badly. The real fight wasn't about a walking path. It was about control of Clearwater Lake itself. As the worker hurried to recover the blueprint, I zoomed in with my phone and took 3 photographs. The images weren't perfect, but they were clear enough to prove one thing. Victoria Hale was building towards something much bigger than she had told anyone, and somewhere inside those hidden records was the reason why. The photographs from the blueprint sat on my kitchen table beside a growing stack of HOA notices. Daniel Brooks studied them carefully. "You see it?" I asked. He nodded. "I see ambition." "Meaning?" He tapped one of the enlarged images. "Boat slips, then another. Viewing decks, then another. Commercial-style expansion." I leaned back. "This isn't a walking trail." "No." Daniel folded the papers. "This is a future waterfront development." That changed everything. Trails cost money. Waterfront access created money. The difference mattered. The next morning, Daniel arranged a meeting with Lisa Turner. As county surveyor, Lisa had access to records most people never bothered to look at. She met us inside the county archives building. Rows of filing cabinets stretched across the room. Property records, boundary maps, historic surveys, decades of county history hidden in paper form. Lisa already had several folders waiting. "You weren't kidding," she said. Daniel smiled. "I rarely do." For the next 3 hours, we compared documents, current subdivision filings, historic ranch surveys, county plats, development approvals. Most matched. Some didn't. Then Lisa stopped turning pages. "What is it?" I asked. She slid a document across the table. I immediately recognized the age of it. Yellowed paper, old county seal, original signatures. "This came from the first subdivision application," she said. Daniel adjusted his glasses. Neither of us spoke for several seconds, because sitting in front of us was the first real crack in Victoria's story. The original filing showed a note typed beneath the shoreline boundary, a note missing from later versions. Daniel read it aloud. "Access granted through temporary easement agreement." I looked at him, then at Lisa. "Temporary?" Lisa nodded. "That's what it says." My pulse quickened. Temporary changed everything. Permanent rights and temporary rights were worlds apart. Daniel immediately requested additional records. The clerk disappeared into the archive room. 20 minutes later, she returned carrying another box. Older. Much older. The documents inside dated back decades, long before Silver Pines existed, long before Victoria ever arrived. One by one, we examined them. Property transfers, survey revisions, county approvals. Then we found it. A recorded agreement signed by my grandfather, the ranch owner at the time. The document granted temporary access across ranch land during future development planning. Nothing more, nothing permanent, nothing transferable. Most importantly, nothing automatic. Lisa reread the language twice. So the road wasn't gifted. No. It wasn't sold. No. It was borrowed. Daniel smiled. Exactly. The room suddenly felt smaller, because a temporary easement only mattered if it still existed, and none of us knew whether it did. Not yet. The county clerk searched another hour. Eventually, she emerged carrying a final folder. The file was thin, only a handful of pages, but those pages changed the entire direction of the case. Lisa opened the folder, read silently, then looked up. For the first time all day, she seemed genuinely surprised. "What?" I asked. She handed me the document. I read the first paragraph, then the second, then the signature section. My eyes narrowed. The agreement included a renewal requirement. Specific, mandatory, clearly written. Without renewal, the easement would eventually expire. I looked at Daniel. He was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Did they renew it? Lisa answered before I could. I haven't found anything. The significance hit immediately. If no renewal existed, then every assumption Silver Pines was operating under could be wrong. Every trail, every expansion plan, every claim Victoria had made, potentially wrong. The problem was we still needed proof. Assumptions wouldn't win a hearing. Evidence would. As we packed up the documents, Daniel placed copies into a separate folder. This stays protected. I nodded. What now? We verify everything. Lisa agreed. No shortcuts. The drive back to the ranch felt different. For the first time since Victoria stepped onto my property, the balance had shifted. Not publicly, not visibly, but legally. And legal ground mattered more than public opinion. That evening, I returned to Clearwater Lake. Construction on the trail continued. Workers installed another sign near the shoreline. Several subdivision residents walked the unfinished path, laughing, admiring the view, completely unaware of what we had discovered. Victoria stood near the water speaking with 2 board members, confident, relaxed, certain of victory. She waved when she noticed me, a small smile crossing her face, the smile of someone who believed the outcome was already decided. I nodded politely, then kept walking. Because for the first time, I knew something she didn't. Somewhere inside the county records sat a document that could determine the future of the entire subdivision. And if the missing renewal couldn't be found, the road leading into Silver Pines might not belong to Silver Pines at all. It might still belong to the ranch. And if that proved true, Victoria wasn't building a trail across my property. She was building her future on land she never legally controlled in the first place. The problem was that proving it would take time. Victoria seemed determined to make those weeks as miserable as possible. The first county inspector arrived on a Tuesday. He stepped out of his truck carrying a clipboard and a file. Complaint about unsafe agricultural equipment storage. I looked at the tractor parked beside my equipment shed. Unsafe? He glanced at it, then at me, then back at the tractor. No, 20 minutes later he closed the file. No violation. Case dismissed. 2 days later another inspector arrived. This time the complaint involved water runoff. According to the report, my ranch operations were allegedly contaminating Clearwater Lake. That accusation was more serious. The county conducted testing. 3 separate samples. Every result came back clean. No violation. Case dismissed. The following week brought a noise complaint, then a fence complaint, then a complaint alleging illegal fuel storage. Each investigation ended the same way. No violation. Case dismissed. But every complaint created paperwork. Every complaint consumed time. Every complaint cost money. And every complaint carried one unmistakable signature. Victoria Hale. Daniel Brooks reviewed the growing stack of reports. She's building pressure. I noticed. Most people eventually lose their temper. I smiled. That's probably what she's waiting for. Exactly. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I expanded the binder. Complaint, inspector, date, outcome, photographs, copies. By the end of the month, the file had become thick enough to stand upright on its own. Then Victoria escalated again. I returned from town one afternoon and found 3 HOA signs attached directly to my fence. Private community trail, resident access, no trespassing. I stared at them for several seconds. The signs were physically attached to my fence, standing on my property, claiming I was the trespasser. I photographed everything, then called Daniel. His response was immediate. Don't remove them. I laughed. You're starting to sound predictable. Good lawyers usually are. The signs stayed exactly where they were. 2 days later, Victoria organized a community walk along the unfinished trail. More than 20 residents showed up. Some carried coffee, others pushed strollers. Most appeared completely unaware of the legal mess surrounding the project. Victoria stood at the front like a tour guide. When she spotted me near the shoreline, her smile widened. This path is becoming one of Silver Pine's greatest assets. I didn't answer. Several residents looked uncomfortable. Others avoided eye contact entirely. Word was spreading. People had begun hearing rumors about surveys, property records, boundary disputes. The confidence Victoria displayed publicly wasn't being shared privately anymore. That became obvious when someone knocked on my door that evening. A middle-aged man stood on the porch. I recognized him from the subdivision. My name's Eric. I nodded. What can I do for you? He lowered his voice. I live in Silver Pines. Okay. I think you should see this. He handed me a folded packet of papers, then glanced back toward the road, almost nervously. What is it? HOA board meeting minutes. That got my attention. I invited him inside. The documents covered several months of meetings. Most were routine. Budget discussions, landscaping, maintenance. Then one section stopped me cold. A proposal, submitted by Victoria. Future Waterfront Enhancement District. Attached was projected revenue, boat slips, dock rentals, premium lake access fees. Everything matched the blueprint photographs. The trail had never been the final goal. It was phase 1. I looked up. Where did you get these? Eric hesitated. My wife serves on one of the committees. And she gave these to you? No. The answer was honest. I copied them. I understood. People inside Silver Pines were starting to ask questions. Questions Victoria couldn't easily answer. Before leaving, Eric stopped at the door. You should know something else. What? Victoria keeps telling residents the county already supports her. My eyes narrowed. Does it? I don't think so. Neither did I. The moment he left, I called Daniel. An hour later, he sat across from me studying the meeting records. When he finished reading, he placed the papers beside the binder. She's investing heavily in waterfront development. Too heavily. Daniel nodded. Which means she believes control of the shoreline is guaranteed. I thought about the expired easement language, the missing renewal, the hidden maps, the growing pressure campaign. Then another realization struck me. Victoria wasn't filing complaints because she was confident. She was filing complaints because she was worried. Every new accusation, every inspector, every violation notice. They weren't signs of strength, they were signs of fear. She needed me distracted, needed me reacting, needed me focused on defending myself. Because if I kept digging into the land records, I might discover something capable of destroying her entire plan. And judging by how desperate she was becoming, I was getting closer than she realized. The breakthrough arrived 3 days later, not from an attorney, not from a surveyor, from an 80-year-old neighbor carrying 2 dusty cardboard boxes. I was repairing a gate hinge when Martha Green pulled into the ranch driveway. Her truck was older than mine. The boxes sat in the passenger seat. She climbed out slowly and waved me over. I think I found something. Martha's family had lived near Clearwater Lake longer than almost anyone still in the county. If she said something was worth seeing, I paid attention. We carried the boxes into my workshop. Inside were photo albums, hundreds of photographs, some loose, some organized, many decades old, family gatherings, fishing trips, county fairs, ranch work. At first glance, none of it seemed connected to the HOA dispute. Then Martha opened an album from the early 1980s. Everything changed. Look here. She pointed toward a photograph showing several men standing beside the lake. Behind them sat a gravel road. A familiar gravel road. The same route that eventually became the entrance into Silver Pines Estates. I leaned closer. Visible beside the road was an old wooden sign. Property of Walker Ranch. Authorized access only. I stared at it. Martha smiled. Keep looking. The next photograph showed the same road from another angle. Then another. Then another. Year after year. Different seasons, different events. Same road, same ownership sign. The evidence wasn't dramatic. It was something better. Consistent. Real. Documented history. I immediately called Daniel Brooks. He arrived that evening. By the time he finished reviewing the photographs, his excitement was obvious. This is excellent. It helps? It helps a lot. Daniel spread several images across the table. What makes evidence powerful isn't one photograph. He tapped the collection. It's repetition. The road appeared again in photos from 1986. Every image reinforced the same fact. The route leading toward the future subdivision had historically been treated as ranch property. Not public property, not community property, ranch property. Martha wasn't finished. She opened the second box. This one contained larger photographs, aerial images, county fair exhibits, historical society prints. One image immediately caught my attention. The shoreline. Specifically, the section where Victoria's Trail now crossed my land. A handwritten date sat on the back. Long before Silver Pines existed. Long before any HOA meetings. Long before any development plans. The image showed fencing extending all the way to the water. Clear, undisputed, exactly where the current property line sat. Daniel took photographs of every image, then requested permission to digitize everything. Martha agreed immediately. I figured these might matter. You figured right. The following week brought more pressure from Victoria. Another complaint, this time involving alleged environmental violations near the shoreline. County officials investigated. Again. Nothing. No violation. Case closed. But something had changed. The county employees arriving at the ranch no longer looked convinced by the accusations. Most of them had seen the pattern. Multiple complaints, No evidence. No violations. The credibility gap was growing. Victoria felt it too. I knew because she showed up personally 2 days later. This time she wasn't smiling. She stepped out of her SUV holding a folder. "You're spreading misinformation." I almost laughed. "About what?" "The lake." "Interesting. Not the trail. Not the inspections. The lake." Again. The county doesn't seem concerned. Her jaw tightened. "You're interfering with community improvements. I haven't stopped a single thing." Technically true. The trail remained untouched. The signs remained standing. The construction remained active. Victoria pointed toward the shoreline. "You know you're wrong." That statement stayed with me, not because of what she said, because of how she said it. There was no certainty in her voice anymore, only frustration. Fear disguised as confidence. The conversation ended quickly. She left. But the moment mattered, because for the first time since this began, Victoria looked like someone losing control. That same afternoon, Lisa Turner called. "I've finished another review." My pulse immediately quickened. "What did you find?" "Nothing filed." "Meaning?" "The easement renewal." I sat forward. Lisa continued. "I checked county records going back decades. And there's no renewal agreement." Silence. Not because I didn't understand, because I did. Every word, every implication, every consequence. No renewal, no extension, no replacement document. Nothing. The temporary access agreement appeared to have simply expired. Lisa wasn't making conclusions yet. Neither was Daniel. But the direction was becoming impossible to ignore. The foundation underneath Victoria's entire argument was beginning to crack. And now we had something else. Historic photographs, property records, missing renewal documents, independent evidence pointing toward the same conclusion. As the call ended, I looked toward Clearwater Lake. Workers were still building. Residents were still walking the trail. Victoria was still acting like she owned the future. But somewhere beneath all that confidence sat a problem she couldn't fix. The past. And the past was finally starting to talk. The call from Lisa Turner came early Monday morning. "Ethan, the survey is finished." I was already reaching for my truck keys. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from her inside the county survey office. Several large maps were spread across a conference table. Daniel Brooks was already there. Neither of them looked relaxed. That immediately got my attention. Lisa pointed toward the largest map. "This is the current county parcel layout." I nodded. She placed a second map beside it. "This is the original ranch survey." Then a third. The subdivision filing. The differences were subtle, almost invisible, but not invisible enough. Lisa traced a line with her finger. "See this section?" "The entrance road." "Correct." "The paved road leading into Silver Pines Estates. The road every resident used. The road school buses used. The road delivery trucks used. The road emergency vehicles used." Lisa looked directly at me. "It doesn't sit where everyone thinks it does." The room fell silent. Daniel smiled slightly. Not because he was surprised, because he wasn't. "We confirmed it twice," Lisa said. Then a third time. She slid a certified survey report across the table. I read it carefully. The language was clear. The measurements were precise. The conclusion was devastating. A substantial portion of the subdivision's primary access road remained legally attached to Walker Ranch. Not the HOA. Not the county. Walker Ranch. My ranch. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Daniel leaned back. "This changes everything." He wasn't exaggerating. Until that moment, the dispute had been about a trail, a shoreline, an easement. Now it was about access. Without that road, Silver Pines became a subdivision shown with a serious legal problem. The stakes had just exploded. "What happens next?" I asked. Lisa answered carefully. "The report goes to county officials. And then? Then people start asking questions. Questions started arriving faster than any of us expected. By Wednesday, county planning officials had requested copies. By Thursday, the county attorney's office wanted documentation. By Friday, rumors were spreading throughout Silver Pines. Someone had leaked the survey. Nobody knew who. But everyone knew the result. The entrance road might not belong to the HOA. I saw the impact firsthand that weekend. Residents gathered near the subdivision entrance. Small groups, quiet conversations, concerned faces. The confidence that had fueled Victoria's campaign was beginning to crack. Then she made a mistake. A very public mistake. I was checking fence lines near the road when a black SUV pulled up beside me. Victoria stepped out. 2 HOA board members followed. Neither looked happy. Victoria marched toward me holding several papers. "What did you do?" I almost laughed. "Good afternoon to you too. You filed something." "No. You manipulated the survey." That accusation was so ridiculous I didn't bother responding immediately. Instead, I looked at the papers in her hand. Copies of Lisa's report. She noticed and quickly lowered them. Too late. I'd already seen enough. The survey was circulating. Victoria knew it, and she was panicking. "You've created unnecessary confusion." "No," I said calmly. "The county survey created clarity." Her jaw tightened. "The residents are upset." I glanced toward Silver Pines. People were watching from driveways, porches, golf carts. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at her. The difference mattered. For the first time, she was losing control of the narrative. "The survey is wrong. Then challenge it." "We will." "Good." That answer caught her off guard. Because that's exactly what I wanted. An official challenge. A public review. A legal process. The one thing evidence tends to survive. Victoria pointed toward the subdivision. "People invested their savings here." "I know. This road belongs to the community." I shook my head. "Ownership isn't decided by feelings." That landed harder than I expected. One of the board members actually looked away. Victoria noticed it too. The meeting ended quickly after that. She returned to her SUV. The board members followed. But something had changed. The people standing behind her looked less certain, far less certain. That evening, Daniel called. The county confirmed receipt of the survey. Any response? Several. His tone told me there was more. "Keep going." The county attorney requested every document related to the easement. I sat up. That was important. Very important. Because government lawyers don't request records unless they believe those records matter. Daniel continued. And Lisa found something else. "What?" "A second historical reference to the temporary access agreement." I felt my pulse quicken. Another reference meant more evidence, more confirmation, more weight. The road issue is becoming impossible to ignore. Outside my window, I could see vehicles entering Silver Pines, families heading home, kids riding bicycles, people living normal lives. Most of them had done nothing wrong. Most had no idea how this situation started, which was exactly why the next part mattered. The goal had never been revenge. The goal was truth, and the truth was finally reaching places Victoria couldn't control. By the following Monday, County officials formally acknowledged the survey findings. Not a final ruling. Not yet. But an official acknowledgement. The moment that happened, the entire dispute entered a new phase, because the question was no longer whether Ethan Walker owned the land around Clearwater Lake. The question was whether the HOA had spent years acting like it owned a road that never legally belonged to it at all. And if the county confirmed that conclusion, Victoria Hale wouldn't just lose an argument. She could lose the foundation underneath her entire development. The county announced the hearing 10 days later. Officially, it was a land use review. Unofficially, everyone knew what it really was: a fight over ownership, a fight over access, a fight over who had been telling the truth. The news spread quickly through Red Creek. By the end of the week, reporters were calling. Residents were talking. Silver Pines homeowners were demanding answers from their board. And Victoria Hale was suddenly much harder to find. The HOA stopped sending violation notices. No more inspectors arrived at my ranch. No more anonymous complaints appeared. For the first time in months, the pressure campaign went quiet. Not because Victoria had changed, because she was preparing. So was I. The binder that had started with a few violation letters now filled multiple boxes. Photographs, county reports, survey records, HOA notices, meeting minutes, construction photos, historic images from Martha Green. Every piece connected to the next. Every piece pointed toward the same conclusion. 3 days before the hearing, Daniel Brooks called. "We need one final review." I drove into town immediately. Lisa Turner was already waiting. Maps covered nearly every surface in the conference room. The certified survey sat in the center. Daniel pointed to it. "This remains our strongest evidence." Lisa nodded, but it's not enough alone. She opened another folder. Inside were copies of the historic photographs Martha had provided. Road signs, property markers, fencing, years of visual documentation. The timeline stretched back decades. Daniel smiled. Nobody planned for Martha Green. Neither had Victoria. That fact mattered, because historical evidence doesn't care about politics, or influence, or confidence. It simply exists. Then Daniel opened one final folder. The room became quiet. Inside sat copies of the original easement agreement, the temporary access document, the one signed years earlier by my grandfather, the document that had started unraveling everything. "We're ready," Daniel said. For the first time, I believed him. The morning of the hearing arrived fast. By the time I reached the county administration building, the parking lot was nearly full. Ranchers, residents, business owners, county officials, several local reporters, even a few real estate investors. Everyone understood the implications. If the road issue was real, property values across Silver Pines could be affected. The stakes extended far beyond one argument between neighbors. Inside, the hearing room buzzed with conversation. Then I saw Victoria. She stood near the front, surrounded by HOA board members. Confident, professional, perfectly composed, at least from a distance. Up close, the cracks were easier to see. The forced smile, the tension around her eyes, the way she kept checking her phone. She noticed me. For a moment, our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to argue. The evidence would do the talking now. The hearing began shortly after 9. County officials outlined the process: survey review, historical records, public testimony. Final findings would come later. Not today. Today was about facts. Victoria spoke first. She spent nearly 40 minutes presenting maps, development plans, HOA filings, property projections. The presentation was polished, professional, and carefully selective. Several important documents never appeared on her screen. I recognized every omission. So did Daniel. When Victoria finished, several residents applauded politely. She sat down looking satisfied, as though she had regained control. Then Daniel stood. The room shifted immediately. No slides, no dramatic presentation, just boxes, one after another, placed directly on the evidence table. The sound of cardboard hitting wood echoed through the room. People leaned forward. Reporters started taking notes. Daniel opened the first box, then the second, then the third. Photographs, inspection reports, historical records, county filings, certified surveys. The visual impact alone changed the atmosphere. Because unlike Victoria's presentation, this wasn't a story. It was documentation. Hours of it. Years of it. Daniel walked through the timeline methodically. Violation notices, failed complaints, construction records, historic property evidence. Then Lisa Turner testified. The room became silent. As county surveyor, she carried credibility neither side could manufacture. She explained the survey findings, the measurements, the parcel history, the road alignment. Every answer was calm, precise, professional, and every answer moved the hearing further away from Victoria's position. I watched the faces around the room. Concern spread slowly, especially among HOA residents. For months they had been told the issue was simple. Now it clearly wasn't. Then came the moment that changed everything. A county commissioner looked toward Daniel. "Do you have anything further?" Daniel glanced at me, then at the boxes, then toward the evidence folder he had kept closed all morning. "Yes." His voice remained calm, but what comes next is the document everyone should see. He lifted a single folder onto the table. The original easement records. The room fell completely silent. Even Victoria stopped moving, because everyone suddenly understood the same thing. The hearing wasn't about a trail anymore. It wasn't about a fence, or a lake, or an HOA complaint. It was about the one document that could determine whether Silver Pines had built its future on rights it never legally possessed. And in a matter of minutes, that document was finally going to be read into the record. Daniel Brooks opened the folder carefully. No dramatic gestures, no speeches, just paper. The kind of paper capable of changing everything. He handed copies to the county commissioners, the county attorney, and the hearing clerk. Across the room, Victoria Hale sat perfectly still. Too still. The confidence she had displayed all morning was gone. Now she looked like someone waiting for bad news she already suspected was coming. Daniel approached the podium. "The document before you is the original access agreement recorded between Walker Ranch and the development entity that preceded Silver Pines Estates." The room remained silent. Every chair occupied. Every eye forward. Daniel continued. "The agreement granted temporary access across ranch property during future development planning and construction. Nothing surprising yet. Most people already knew that part." Then he turned the page. "The next section is the one that matters." I saw several reporters lean forward. The county attorney picked up a pen. Victoria looked down at her table. Daniel read directly from the document. "Access rights shall remain in effect only during the approved term, unless formally renewed through written agreement and county filing." A commissioner interrupted. "Meaning?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Meaning the easement was temporary." Murmurs spread across the room. The commissioner asked the next obvious question. "Was it renewed?" Daniel looked toward Lisa Turner. She stood. "As county surveyor, I conducted a complete records review." She placed a certified report on the table. No renewal agreement exists within county records. The room became even quieter. Not dramatic silence. The uncomfortable kind. The kind that appears when people realize something important is collapsing in real time. Victoria finally stood. We dispute that conclusion. The county attorney looked up. On what basis? Victoria held up several documents. Silver Pines has operated under continuous access for years. The attorney nodded. That's not the question. She froze. The distinction mattered. Use and ownership are not the same thing. Everyone in that room understood it. The attorney repeated himself. Do you possess a recorded renewal? Victoria opened her folder, turned pages, checked another section, then another, no answer. The silence stretched. For the first time since this conflict began, nobody was looking at me. They were looking at her, waiting. Eventually, she spoke. The development relied on established access, not an answer. The attorney noticed. So that's a no. Victoria sat down. Several HOA residents exchanged worried looks. Then Daniel delivered the second blow, the one that truly changed the hearing. He displayed the certified survey. The road alignment appeared on a large screen. Colored overlays showed historic parcel boundaries, current road placement, property ownership, everything. Lisa explained each measurement, every marker, every coordinate, every calculation. No emotion, no opinion, just facts. When she finished, one conclusion remained. A substantial portion of the primary subdivision entrance road sat on land legally connected to Walker Ranch, not HOA property, not county property. Walker Ranch. A resident stood from the audience. Are you saying we don't own our road? The commissioner answered carefully. We're saying ownership must be determined according to the recorded documents. Another resident stood. What happens if the easement expired? Nobody answered immediately. Because everyone already knew. The answer wasn't pleasant. Martha Green sat quietly near the back. The photographs she had provided were now displayed beside the survey maps. Decades of evidence. Road signs. Property markers. Historical access points. Together they told a story that no modern HOA filing could erase. The past had arrived. And it was winning. Victoria made one final attempt. She approached the podium again. This community invested millions of dollars based on these assumptions. Her voice was louder now, more emotional. Families bought homes. Businesses invested. Children lived there. Nobody disagreed. But none of it changed the documents. Judge Harold Benson had attended the hearing as an observer because the dispute was likely heading toward formal review. For the first time all day, he spoke. His voice was calm, measured. The law does not determine ownership based on assumption. The room became completely silent. The law determines ownership through recorded rights. No one challenged him. Because they couldn't, Victoria slowly returned to her seat. The fight had changed. Not because she lost an argument, because the evidence had removed the argument entirely. Then Daniel introduced the final exhibit. The complete timeline. Original ranch ownership. Temporary easement approval. Development construction. Expiration period. Absence of renewal. Current road placement. Every piece connected. Every piece supported. Every piece documented. When he finished, the county attorney requested all materials be entered into the official record. The request was granted. That moment mattered more than most people realized, because once evidence enters the record, it becomes very difficult to pretend it doesn't exist. The hearing ended shortly afterward. No final ruling yet. That would come later. But the atmosphere had completely changed. Reporters rushed toward county officials. Residents gathered in worried clusters. Board members avoided cameras. Victoria remained seated, staring at the documents spread across the table. The documents she had spent months trying to avoid. As people began leaving, Daniel gathered his files. I helped pack the boxes. Then one of the commissioners approached me. "Ethan." I looked up. He glanced toward the survey maps, then toward the road displayed on the screen. Finally, he lowered his voice. "You know what this means, right?" I nodded. The answer had become impossible to ignore. Silver Pines existed because Walker Ranch had allowed access for years, not because the HOA owned that access, not because Victoria controlled it, because the ranch had never challenged it. The subdivision wasn't standing on legal certainty, it was standing on permission. And for the first time, everyone in the county knew it. The final ruling came 3 weeks after the hearing. 3 long weeks of speculation. 3 weeks of newspaper articles, emergency HOA meetings, and nervous conversations throughout Silver Pines. Victoria Hale spent most of that time insisting everything would be resolved in the HOA's favor. The confidence sounded familiar. I'd heard it before, back when she called the sheriff on me for parking in my own driveway, back when she claimed my shoreline belonged to her community, back when she acted as though ownership could be decided by determination instead of documents. Now the documents had spoken, and the county was ready to respond. The hearing room was packed again when Judge Harold Benson entered. Residents filled every seat. Reporters lined the walls. Several county officials stood near the back. Victoria sat with the HOA board. The difference was impossible to miss. Half the board members who had supported her months earlier were gone. The remaining ones looked exhausted. Judge Benson reviewed the findings methodically. Survey records, property history, the temporary easement, the missing renewal, historic photographs, county filings. Everything. No drama, no surprises, just evidence. Then came the ruling. The court finds that the disputed access easement expired without recorded renewal. Silence. The court further finds that significant portions of the primary subdivision access corridor remain legally associated with Walker Ranch. More silence. No one interrupted. No one objected. Because there was nothing left to argue. The facts were overwhelming. Then Judge Benson looked directly toward me. However, the court also recognizes that hundreds of residents have relied upon continued access in good faith. That mattered, very much, because the dispute had never been with the families living there. It had always been with the abuse of authority that started it. The judge continued. The court therefore encourages negotiated resolution consistent with public interest and lawful ownership. Victoria stood abruptly. "This is absurd." Several people turned toward her. She looked around the room, perhaps expecting support, perhaps expecting outrage. Instead, she found neither. Only disappointment. One board member quietly lowered his eyes. Another simply walked out. Judge Benson remained calm. The ruling stands. That was the end of it. Not the conflict. The illusion. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded everyone involved. Questions came from every direction. Would the road close? Would property values collapse? Would residents lose access? I answered every question the same way. No, the crowd grew quiet. I continued. The road serves families. Several residents exchanged relieved looks. The dispute was never with homeowners, and that was the truth. A week later, Daniel Brooks finalized a long-term easement agreement. Legal, recorded, transparent. Unlike the arrangement Victoria had relied upon, The new agreement protected access for residents while protecting the ranch from future encroachment. Clear boundaries, clear responsibilities, no assumptions, no shortcuts. The county approved it. The residents approved it. The crisis ended the moment certainty replaced confusion. Victoria Hale did not survive politically. The HOA board voted to remove her as president. Several residents publicly demanded accountability for the legal costs. The trail project stopped immediately. The waterfront expansion plan disappeared entirely. Months of promises vanished overnight. Not because anyone attacked her, because the truth arrived. Silver Pines elected a new board shortly afterward. The first thing they did was meet with me, not to argue, to cooperate. The relationship changed almost immediately. People stopped viewing the ranch as an obstacle. They started viewing it as part of the community, exactly what it had always been. A few weeks later, I was repairing a fence near the entrance gate when I heard vehicles approaching. 2 sheriff's trucks rolled onto the ranch road. Deputy Ryan Cole stepped out first. Another deputy followed carrying a document tube. I walked over. "What did I do now?" Ryan laughed. "Nothing." He handed me the tube. Inside was the final recorded easement package. Filed, approved, complete. The last piece of paperwork, the last loose end, the last chapter. I signed the receipt. Ryan tucked the copy under his arm. Then something unexpected happened. The 2 deputies straightened. Not formally, not ceremonially, just naturally. The way professionals acknowledge someone who handled a difficult situation the right way. Ryan tipped his hat. The other deputy followed. A quiet salute. Respect. Nothing more. Nothing less. For a second, I remembered the morning this began. Victoria standing in the driveway. The sheriff call. The accusations. The certainty in her voice. She had expected law enforcement to remove me from my own land. Instead, months later, law enforcement was standing at the gate recognizing the man who had protected it. After they left, I remained by the entrance for a while. The wooden gate stood open. Traffic moved normally along the road. Families came and went. No tension. No conflict. Just life. Later that evening, Martha Green stopped by with homemade pie. The new HOA president called to discuss maintenance coordination. Children rode bicycles near the subdivision entrance. Normal things. The kind of things people rarely appreciate until conflict disappears. As the sun settled over Clearwater Lake, I leaned against my pickup and looked across the water. The ranch remained intact. The shoreline remained protected. The residents kept their access. The law had done exactly what it was supposed to do. Not create winners and losers, create clarity. Victoria Hale thought power came from authority. Turns out, it came from something much stronger. Evidence, patience, truth. The wind moved across the lake. The gate remained open. And for the first time in a very long while, nobody questioned who owned the land beyond it.
If there's one lesson I take from all of this, it's that standing your ground doesn't always mean fighting louder. Sometimes it means staying patient, keeping records, following the law, and refusing to let frustration make decisions for you. Ethan never won because he won stronger, richer, or more connected. He won because the facts never changed. The documents were there. The history was there. The truth was there. He simply stayed steady long enough for it to be seen. And maybe that's something worth remembering beyond ranges, property lines, and HOA disputes. Whether it's your land, your reputation, or your peace of mind, some things are worth protecting, not with anger, but with persistence. Real strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to stay calm while everyone else to resting to conclusion. Now I love to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a difficult neighbor, a property dispute, or a situation where you had to stand up for what was right? Type yes if you would have handled it the same way Ethan did, or no if you think you would have taken the different approach. And if you have got a story of your own, say it in the comments. I read as many as I can, and some of the best ones inspire future videos. And if you enjoy stories about ordinary people showing quiet courage, protecting what matters, and letting two do the heavy lifting, be sure to subscribe and join us for the next story. There's always another road, another range, and another lesson waiting just around the bend.